WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Lagos. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM in Dakar, Senegal. We're also live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on the WADR app. My name is Atiewin Imbila.
And I am Veronique Njai.
Here are our top stories.
U.S. government orders non-essential embassy staff out of Abuja over rising security concerns, sparking anxiety among residents.
It is scary. If the U.S. Embassy is telling their employee to leave, it means that the insecurity in the country is getting worse.
Supporters of former Nigerian President Ibrahim Barry Mai Nasara intensify calls for justice 27 years after his assassination.
The Gambia admits unlawful rearrest of acquitted murder suspect Usainu Bojang, raising rule of law concerns.
It's not lawful, it's regrettable, it happened. After having been formally released from the prisons, he could not have been rearrested without a further court order.
And French Trade Minister visits Guinea to deepen economic and diplomatic ties. Stay tuned for details of these stories and many more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Many thanks for joining us. Let's begin with news centered on security because the United States government has ordered non-essential American embassy staff and their families to leave Abuja over growing security concerns. Now, this advisory has sparked anxiety among residents in Nigeria's capital.
The development has raised questions about the nature of the threat and whether such warnings could trigger panic among the public. WADR's Yechenu Sasitu tells us more.
The directive issued by the U.S. Department of State followed an assessment of Nigeria's security situation, citing risks including crime, terrorism, kidnapping, and civil unrest. The advisory also urged American citizens to reconsider travel to Nigeria while maintaining heightened alert levels for several parts of the country. In reaction, some Abuja residents say the warning has heightened fear.
It is scary. If the U.S. Embassy is telling their employee to leave, it means that the insecurity in the country is getting worse.
I would say it's 50-50, 50% shock and 50% not so shocking to me because of all the happenings that have been going on.
And then 2, they know that they are targeted. And 3, it may also be that there are troops that we're told arrived Nigeria. Maybe they want to start striking.
2022, the United States and many Western governments issued similar travel alerts, which sparked panic, but nothing happened. Nevertheless, we mustn't take this for granted.
Security analyst Olumayowa Olaniyi says while such advisories are standard diplomatic practice, they can trigger public anxiety if not properly managed.
It speaks to the fact that security situation in the country is fluid, is constantly changing. Looking at everything that is going on, there are concerns, very serious concerns about the way security is bolstered in this part of the country.
On intelligence sharing, he emphasizes the importance of collaboration between foreign governments and Nigerian authorities to prevent potential threats before they occur.
I don't think it's going to be a problem to share intelligence. And of course, we know that there are constant, continuous ISR support by the U.S. government in Nigeria. We know that they are operating currently in the country. Bringing such information to the public puts everybody on their toes.
The development highlights ongoing concerns about security in Nigeria as both citizens and authorities continue to navigate evolving threats. For WADR, Yechenu Sasitu in Abuja.
For matters of security, let's look at justice delivery because the Gambia's justice minister has admitted that the rearrest of acquitted murder suspect Usainu Bojang was unlawful and not supported by any court order. Dauda A. Jallo made the remarks during a recent press briefing, describing the move as regrettable and a failure to follow due legal process.
The development has raised fresh concerns about respect for the rule of law in the country, even as Bojang has now been released. WADR's Banjul correspondent, Sang Donald Mendy, reports.
Usainu Bojang, who is now free again, had been accused of killing 2 police officers in the Sukuta Jaban traffic light shooting. His rearrest, authorities now admit, had no legal basis. Speaking to journalists, Justice Dauda A. Jallo said the decision to rearrest Bojang was not backed by a competent court. He described the action as unfortunate lapses.
It's not lawful, it's regrettable, it happened. After having been formally released from the prisons, he could not have been rearrested without a further court order.
The admission has triggered strong reactions from civil society actors and right groups who say the incident undermines the Constitution and threatens the rule of law. They warn that such actions risk eroding public confidence in the justice system. Human rights activist Madi Jobate says,
issue is, why would it happen in the first place? If truly the government has respect for the Constitution and all that it entails, the rule of law, the separation of powers, and the respect for the independence and the authority of the judiciary. His acknowledgement raises a very, very serious question about the government's willingness to abide by the rule of law.
For many Gambians, the case is being seen as a test of how far the Gambia has progressed in strengthening its democratic institutions and ensuring respect for judicial decisions. Despite the controversy, the Justice Minister maintains that the government remains committed to upholding the law and says steps will be taken to prevent a recurrence. But even with Bojang now freed again, questions remain over accountability and what concrete actions will follow the minister's admission, as calls intensify for those responsible to be held to account. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Sangdona Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
Now to Niger, where 27 years after the assassination of former Nigerian President Ibrahim Bare Mainasara, calls for justice are once again intensifying as his family and supporters continue to demand full accountability. On April 9, 1999, General Mainasara was killed in Niamey Airport in a hail of gunfire in what was widely described as an assassination carried out by members of his own presidential guard.
But decades on, the circumstances surrounding his death remain unresolved, despite a 2015 ruling by the ECOWAS Court of Justice, which found the state of Niger responsible and ordered compensation for his family. More recently, in 2025, the National Conference on Refoundation renewed calls for the truth to be fully established, reigniting hopes that justice will be served. As the country marks another anniversary of his death, his family says the wait for closure continues. Jibril Bare Mainasara, a brother of the late president, explains.
We know who did it. It is not a mystery. The individuals involved were armed, and none of them later admitted responsibility, saying they acted in collaboration with elements of the political class and sections of civil society. At the time, groups such as the Front for the Restoration and Defense of Democracy were active, along with some civil society organizations. There were also external powers involved, and their role was not hidden.
That was Jibril Bare Mainasara, brother of the late Nigerian president who was assassinated 27 years ago.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's now turn our attention to some diplomatic news. First in Senegal, because sovereignty, patriotism and the idea of a multipolar world were at the heart of an exchange between Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko and French geopolitical analyst Pascal Boniface on Thursday in Dakar. The meeting, held at the Musée Civilisation Noire, comes amid tensions surrounding some of Senegal's recent political choices. Christopher Tichu reports.
The discussion focused on how African states can assert their sovereignty in an international context marked by shifting global power dynamics. For Senegalese authorities, this means having the ability to freely determine the country's political direction without external pressure. According to Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko, sovereignty must be fully reflected in public decision-making.
Legal certainty budgetary discipline, economic transformation, well-managed international negotiations, strong institutions, and respect for public commitment. But stopping at these elements is not enough. Sovereignty is not only a matter of structures, but it's also a matter of will, and that is where patriotism, which is deeply important to us, comes in.
For his part, Pascal Boniface pointed to changing global power dynamics, noting that African states now have greater rooms for maneuver. He says Senegal's assertion of sovereignty forms part of a global transformation in the global order.
European countries have long sought independence from others. We must therefore recognize this growing desire for autonomy, one that is likely to lead to more balance and ultimately more productive partnerships. In that sense, Senegal's effort to assert its sovereignty more strongly than before is, in my view, an advantage for France, as it creates a relationship in which both sides benefit.
The meeting comes at a time when several African countries are advocating for a new form of engagement with Western power. Increasingly, sovereignist leaders are coming to power, promoting what they describe as a win-win partnership between Africa and the West.
That was Christopher Aticho with that report. Meanwhile, the French Minister Delegate for Trade has been in Conakry since this week as part of efforts to strengthen diplomatic and economic relations between Guinea and France. Nicolas Forestier held talks with senior Guinean officials on potential cooperation in key sectors, including health, industry, transport and mining.
Now, Guinean President Mamadi Doumbouya is expected in Paris in the coming days to advance these discussions with his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron. Augustine Colley has the details.
The visit follows the Guinean-France Business Forum held last week in Conakry. On arrival in the Guinean capital, Nicolas Forestier met with several government officials before being received at the presidential palace by President Mamadi Doumbouya. At the end of his visit, the French trade minister expressed confidence in the strength of diplomatic relations between Guinea and France, while reiterating his commitment to further strengthening them. For Guinean political analyst Ibrahim Abba, the visit of the French envoy to Conakry following the election of President Mamadi Doumbouya is significant. According to him, it reflects France's intention to revitalize its diplomatic and economic relations with Guinea. President Mamadi Doumbouya is expected to make his first official visit to France in the coming days at the invitation of Emmanuel Macron. The meeting is expected to mark a new phase in cooperation between the two countries.
Conakry correspondent Cherno Alpha Ibrahim Abalde, his report presented by Augustine Colley. Let's now turn to some other matters. Director General of the International Labour Organization, Gilbert Fosu-Humbo, is on a working visit to Burkina Faso. He arrived in Ouagadougou on Thursday, April 9, as part of efforts to strengthen cooperation between the Sahel state and the International Labour Organization.
Upon his arrival, the ILO Director General was welcomed by Burkinabe Minister of Foreign Affairs, Karamoko Jean-Marie Traoré. Imo Edit gives us the details.
Speaking during the meeting, the ILO Director General emphasized the importance of engaging directly with local authorities. He noted that field visits helped ensure that international support reflects the vision and strategies defined by the country itself. He also highlighted the need to compare global perceptions with realities on the ground, pointing out that information shared through some channels, especially social media, may not always present an accurate picture. Discussions between the two officials also focused on the ongoing security and humanitarian challenges facing Burkina Faso, as well as opportunities for development, particularly in youth employment. The ILO chief commended the government's efforts to prioritize young people in public policy and acknowledge progress in economic and financial governance. For his part, the Foreign Affairs Minister welcomed the visit, saying it will help improve the country's international image and enhance cooperation with development partners. The visit comes part of a broader regional tour by the ILO Director General across member countries of the Alliance of Sahel States, aimed at strengthening partnerships in the region.
That was Imo Edet with that report. Still on labor issues, Mali could be heading toward a fresh standoff in the education sector as tensions rise between the Ministry of National Education and teachers' unions just months ahead of the end-of-year examinations. The dispute follows a recent decision to deploy teachers holding professional bachelor's degrees to basic schools. A move unions say breaches commitments under the October 15, 2016 agreement, with the unions threatening strike action if no compromise is reached. Concerns are growing over the potential impact on students and the academic calendar. Francis Boniface reports.
The situation stems from a letter dated April 2 from the Minister of National Education directing heads of teaching academies to within 15 days assign teachers with professional bachelor's degrees to basic schools. According to the government, the measure is aimed at strengthening staffing levels in pedagogical support centers. However, for the unions that signed the October 15, 2016 agreement, the decision is unacceptable. They argue that the move violates commitments made under social dialogue, particularly the Stability Pact. Usman Al-Modu, spokesperson for the signatory unions of October 15, 2016.
Today, regarding the letter from the Minister of National Education, we believe, based on the relevant legal texts, that it is legally unfounded, strategically unsound, and above all, pedagogically inappropriate. We remain committed to the Stability Pact. The silence of education unions does not mean there are no problems. Rather, we have chosen to address these issues within the framework of that pact. This process goes beyond trade unions, involving continued dialogue with the departments responsible for social dialogue and the public service.
In response, the education unions have announced plans to hold a General Assembly on the matter. They are not ruling out the possibility of a strike if no compromise is reached.
The decision to convene General Assemblies is aimed at engaging our members to listen to them and explain why the ministry has taken this decision and why we as education unions disagree with it. If, after their assessment, members call for strike action, then the unions will proceed accordingly. And should end-of-year examinations be disrupted, responsibility will lie with the Ministry of National Education.
In the meantime, they are calling on authorities to return to dialogue in order to prevent a fresh crisis in the education sector. So far, the Ministry of National Education has not issued a response.
That was a report by our Bamako correspondent Ali Cham and presented by Francis Boniface.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM in Dakar, Senegal. We're also live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on the WADR app. Here's a recap of our top stories.
U.S. government orders non-essential embassy staff out of Abuja over rising security concerns, sparking anxiety among citizens.
Also, supporters of former Nigerian President Ibrahim Bare Mainarase intensify calls for justice 27 years after his assassination.
The Gambia admits unlawful rearrest of acquitted murder suspect Usainu Bojang, raising rule of law concerns.
And French Trade Minister visits Guinea to deepen economic and diplomatic ties. And still in ahead of the news, we have guest interview and sports. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Thank you for staying with us. In the fight against graft, a new wave of anti-corruption enforcement has intensified in Liberia following a fourth indictment by the Assets Recovery and Property Retrieval Task Force, targeting senior former government officials and associated actors. The case centers on the alleged diversion of over $1.8 million earmarked for rural women's development and empowerment funds intended to support vulnerable entrepreneurs nationwide.
Now, the task force emphasized that all defendants were granted due process in line with Article 20A of Liberia's 1986 constitution, including opportunities to respond to allegations with legal representation. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
Investigators say that during the 2023 fiscal year, the government of Liberia allocated $2 million for the Vulnerable Small Business Support Program, a key initiative under the Rural Women Empowerment Fund. Of that amount, $1,819,469.43 was reportedly disbursed and placed under the control of ministry officials. RT Chairperson Edwin Clark Martin alleges that the funds were willfully diverted for personal use, depriving rural women, small business owners, and the grassroots economic groups of critical financial support.
Those indicted are Mawen G. Dix, former Minister of Commerce and Industry, Chidu J.N. Newell, Financial Controller, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Joseph Yudu Howell, former Senior Policy Advisor, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Kevin Munger, President, National Rural Women, Elizabeth Tina Samula, President, Liberian Marketing Association, Josephine Henfo Green, former Secretary General, National Rural Women, Kemo Bobo, Cashier, Ministry of Commerce and Industry.
This latest action adds to a growing list of corruption-related indictments involving officials from previous administration. In recent years, at least a dozen high-profile cases have been brought against the former ministers, agency heads, and the public finance officials. However, many of these cases remain unresolved, with no conclusive convictions secured so far. While the government insists that the latest indictment reflects ongoing efforts to recover public assets, concerns remain over delays within the judiciary process. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Now, the guest interview focuses on Nigeria, where the United States government has mandated all non-essential American staff at its embassy in Abuja to relocate over security concerns. This comes amid heightened security tensions in the country, with recent strikes resulting in the death of several citizens, particularly in the north-central region.
Well, this is not the first time the U.S. has issued such an advisory to its staff in Abuja. Security experts say the latest authorization signals a more pressing concern than previous situations. Our guest is Damina Ebenezer, a Nigerian security expert who provides an analysis of the U.S. advisory.
The U.S. has different categorization, and we are not in the situation where the U.S. is evacuating its diplomatic staff here. So currently, the security situation in the country has not improved. And my understanding is that the U.S. government would rather make sure that the American citizens are aware of the risk instead of having to deploy assets to rescue kidnapped U.S. national. That's primarily the concern. But if you've been in this region for the past 10 years, we are not fully at war yet, but we are not at peace either. Let's put it that way.
Like you said, the security situation in Nigeria has not improved. To what extent should Nigerians be concerned about this advisory coming from the United States, which has also pledged intelligence support to combating terrorism in Nigeria?
Concerned? No. I don't think we should be, because it will not help. The real goal of the terrorists was to get us worried. This is the game being played, is to terrorize the people into normalizing what is absolutely unacceptable. So yes, we should be aware. We should be aware of the risk. We should now realize that the solutions for our problem would not come from outside the border of this country. That yes, there are people who would help us, but there is a limit to what that help could do, and that we need to transition from blaming politicians, blaming our history, blaming the colonial, blaming this, into asking the real question, That is, how do we stand against this darkness that is now virtually covering the region, the northern part of West Africa, and find a way to put an end to it. We can be scared now. That is too late.
When you say citizens can be scared, the reality is on the ground, especially in other regions of Nigeria, proves otherwise in terms of citizens being killed, bandits attacks taking place across the region. So with the U.S. angle coming, it's not a reality.
It is a reality that people are being killed. It's a reality that villages have been ransacked. It's a reality that people are getting kidnapped. That is an undeniable fact. Attack is not the only option. The villagers could surrender and refuse to resist the people attacking them, and there will be no attack. They are being attacked because they resist. And they resist because they refuse to yield to terror.
Are you saying they should give in to the order of bandits?
No. I'm saying if they are not afraid and if they are resisting, if you are living in Abuja or in Lagos or in Port Harcourt, what are you afraid of? Your form of fight cannot be complaining, cannot be crying, cannot be blaming. You have to find a way of providing the necessary support. It's because as a society we have not decided to fight this because it is war. And it is the worst kind of war because we are doing the killing. We are killing ourselves. There's no victory at the end of this war for anybody.
Finally, sir, with this latest adversary, does it mean that Nigeria's capital is expected to be attacked?
Really, the terrorists would attack Abuja if they can get their way out of it. They will attack anywhere if they can succeed. If the security forces could tell you the rate of terror attack plan they are disrupting on a monthly basis, it's not whether Abuja is expected to be attacked, because this is not the first time the U.S. is raising the authorization to leave for non-essential staff, is that the possibility of it had increased. And it has increased because of what is going on across the region, across the northern part of Nigeria. But look at it this way. So what that tells you is that they probably had different mechanism for assessing the threat level, and based on the increased number of attack and the geography of the attack, the risk, of course, of such happening in the capital has gone up.
That was Damina Ebenezer. He's a Nigerian security expert, and he's been providing analysis of the U.S. advisory for non-essential American staff at its embassy in Abuja. Let's now bring you some sports. Mohamed Kudus has suffered a setback in his recovery from a quad injury, dealing a blow to both Tottenham Hotspur and Ghana. The 25-year-old forward, injured in January, was expected back in March, but is now reportedly sidelined for up to 3 months, raising doubts about his availability for the upcoming World Cup in the United States. Tottenham, now under coach Roberto De Zerbi, confirmed the setback in a statement as concerns grow over Kudus' fitness ahead of a crucial period for club and country.
And FIFA has announced its list of match officials for the 2026 World Cup following a rigorous 3-year selection process. The expanded tournament, to be hosted by the United States, Canada and Mexico, will feature a record number of officials, including 52 referees, 88 assistants, and 30 video match officials. 7 referees from Africa made the list, highlighting the continent's growing presence in global officiating.
And we have come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you so much for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudoju for the technical assistance.
Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service.
I am Atiya Winimbila.
And I am Veronique Njai. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County.
Radio Kaigama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM, Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.